It's Monday, March 23rd, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers and new listeners to the NORML Daily Audio Stash, your online home for grassroots organizing. We're glad to have you here. We'll give you a couple of updates before we get started with the show. First of all, coming up this Wednesday, New Hampshire House Bill 648 goes up for a vote. That's the medical marijuana bill in New Hampshire, going up for a vote before the entire legislature, the 400 or so of them, on this Wednesday. So we may have some good news or bad news to break. And speaking of bad news to break, Montana's House Bill 641 got stuck in committee today on a party line vote, 9-9, so it's not going to be making it out of that committee. 641 was the House bill that would have decriminalized the possession of 30 grams of marijuana or less with a $50 ticket and no criminal record. That bill is unfortunately dead, it appears, as of this moment. And today we're going to be debuting a new segment on the Stash where we look at the NORML chapter of the week, so stay tuned for that. Also, making the rounds on the Stash blog over the weekend, we got some great posts up there from our contributors, and this one I thought deserved a little bit of a play on the Stash. It's Adam Carolla on his radio show just ranting about medical marijuana.
It makes no never mind to me. If somebody is suffering from AIDS, somebody is suffering from cancer, leukemia, whatever they're suffering from, and they have decided, just them alone, that this marijuana cigarette helps them in some way, shape, or form, then let them do it. Who am I to stand in between their mouth and that joint when the person's body is riddled with AIDS or cancer or you fill in the blank? If they've decided it helps them unwind after a long weekend, or they've decided it helps them keep their food down and they're not going to yak up their insure this weekend and they're not going to become emaciated because of the marijuana, then all the guys and all the lab coats and the entire planet could tell me it's bad. But if the one guy with AIDS says, I like a marijuana cigarette and it helps me keep my food down, then God bless him. He gets to do it. Really? I mean, what year is it that we're still talking about this? What year is it that we're still busting these places?
It's shocking because so many people with wasting disorders who have trouble eating say that pot helps their appetite. And some of these people have obviously never smoked pot before. They're little old ladies or, they're people who just had trouble with all of the other drugs that treat this.
And then the man gets involved and the man goes, well, they have pharmaceuticals that are just as effective. All right, so I'll take another drug?
For some people, they're not as effective. Absolutely not.
Even if they're just exactly the same, this is a goddamn weed that grows in my back effing yard. Do I really got to make the trip down to the Rite Aid and pay the guy $55 for the stuff that comes in a little pill with the Pfizer stamped on it?
Yeah, because Pfizer needs your money.
Well said, Adam. Bravo. That's probably some of the best talk radio I've heard in a long, long time. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we have your hemp headlines with our lead story of the sentencing of Charles Lynch being postponed today. Also, a look at Paul Armentano's latest post at the Hill blog that once again is just steaming up their comments. In our interview segment today for our Pot and Politics, we take a look at the state of Pennsylvania. We'll be speaking with Mark Cohen, the representative there from Northeast Philadelphia, who will be introducing a medical marijuana measure in the state of Pennsylvania. Also a little behind the scenes as I call Representative Cohen's office to speak to his aide to clarify some information that I thought was a little bit inaccurate in the news story. In our Daily Toker Tunes brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, we've got some more great Message Monday music coming at you from D-Dub. And in our second interview segment, again, our new feature, the Chapter of the Week, we'll be going to Northwestern University in Chicago, Illinois, to speak to James Kowalski and to learn how to set up a NORML college chapter. This is far more stash than one person can handle on their own, so get your friends to help you with it. It's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Federal judge postpones medical marijuana sentencing of Charles Lynch. A federal judge in Los Angeles this morning postponed the sentencing of a man who emerged as a key figure in the national debate over medical marijuana, saying he wanted additional information about a reported change in the Justice Department's policy regarding such prosecutions. U.S. District Court Judge George H. Wu asked prosecutors for a written response from the Justice Department about its position on medical marijuana prosecutions in light of recent comments from Attorney General Eric H. Holder, Jr. Holder said last week that the Justice Department under President Obama has no plans to prosecute dispensary owners who operated within their state's law. Wu said he did not believe that any change in policy would affect the conviction of Charles Lynch, age 47, but the judge said he wanted to consider any new information about the policy before imposing sentence. Following the verdict in August, the jury forewoman said the jurors believed Lynch, quote, meant well, end quote, but concluded that he was breaking federal law. I don't know what information Judge Wu could get from the new federal policy that would change sentencing, since his hands are tied by the mandatory minimums Joe Biden helped to create. Maybe we could plead with President Obama to commute his sentence. I mean, the previous president commuted the sentence of Scooter Libby. You'd think that would be the least you could do for someone like Charles Lynch. Legal pot debuts in the Midwest. Michigan's medical marijuana law will enter its final phase in about 2 weeks, and physicians will start recommending it to patients. For dyed-in-the-wool prohibitionists, this is the end of the world. George Bessar, chief of police in Howell and the president of the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, said, quote, "You can call it medical marijuana, but this is the nose under the tent to the legalization of marijuana. My biggest fear is large, sophisticated growing operations, and eventually storefront operations, which will lead to narcotics robberies. I'd be afraid to have to arrest violent thieves too when I've spent my career arresting compliant pot smokers. I mean, this medical marijuana law is just creating more reported crimes that otherwise would have gone unreported, and George will have to investigate. My heart goes out to him in the hard row he has to hoe. Let's meet some of these worthless pot smokers that have inconvenienced George and the other public servants like him. Bill Kelly, who grew up in a conservative family, came to it apprehensively. Kelly, age 26, suffers from nerve disorders and depression. His foot went numb over lunch. Kelly said, quote, "It got to the point where my psychiatrist was my drug dealer," end quote. And he said a turning point for him was when his doctor prescribed antipsychotic drugs, quote, "and all I saw was red and green colors," end quote. The Kalamazoo man has said he started smoking marijuana in the past year. It's deplorable that Bill has to use a plant instead of the hardcore antipsychotic drugs that occasionally kill people and are sold to children in the black market. Now, Bill won't have to expose himself to crime to obtain the medicine that is most effective for him. Poor, poor Chief Bassar. Ron Stevens lost his job in 2007 after a urine test detected marijuana. Stevens, age 50, suffers from depression and a chronic neck disorder that limits his neck, shoulder, and arm movements. He's undergone a spinal fusion operation, has lost the use of his right hand, and cannot sit for more than 10 or 15 minutes. He spent a decade taking prescribed painkillers, including Vicodin, Percocet, and the synthetic narcotic methadone, which he took for 2 years. Stevens said, quote, "Somehow it was okay for me to show up for work with all those drugs in me. Marijuana carries such a stigma. It's so stupid," end quote. I couldn't have said it better myself. Chronic marijuana abuse leads to severe vomiting attacks. Okay, now I've heard everything. We get this report about cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which allegedly means that too much pot smoking will make you vomit. This obscure clinical manifestation of severe vomiting sickness due to chronic abuse of marijuana, recognized by Dr. Santaneni and his colleagues at the Creighton University of Omaha, Nebraska, was published on March 14, 2009's World Journal of Gastroenterology. The abstract from the journal says, quote, "Cannabis is a common drug of abuse that is associated with various long-term and short-term adverse effects. The nature of its association with vomiting after chronic abuse is obscure and is under-recognized by clinicians. In some patients, this vomiting can take a pattern similar to cyclical vomiting syndrome, with a peculiar compulsive hot bathing pattern, which relieves intense feelings of nausea and accompanying symptoms. In this case report, we describe a 22-year-old male with a history of chronic cannabis abuse presenting with recurrent vomiting, intense nausea, and abdominal pain. In addition, the patient reported that the hot baths improved his symptoms during these episodes. Abstinence from cannabis led to resolution of the vomiting symptoms and abdominal pain. A diagnosis of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome should be considered." And then the medical news site continues, according to Dr. Santaneni, doctors and healthcare workers currently under-recognize the syndrome, leading to delayed diagnosis and expensive diagnostic investigations. Increasing consistent use of marijuana among United States populations, particularly young people, over several years, will see a steady rise in the number of cases diagnosed each year. The syndrome was first recognized in Australia around the Adelaide Hills. The exact mechanism leading to generation of these symptoms, why it appears only after several years of marijuana abuse, and why compulsive hot showering behavior relieves the symptoms, is still under scientific investigation. The recognition of this novel syndrome and increasing physician awareness is supported by the Department of Medicine at Creighton University Medical Center. Similarly, scientists and doctors at other institutions worldwide are beginning to identify more cases with this new syndrome as a result of chronic marijuana abuse among populations. Well, this is the first time I've ever heard of anyone vomiting because of marijuana instead of using marijuana because of vomiting. You'd think in the 40-plus years of serious marijuana use in America, we'd have heard of some cases of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome by now. You'd think somebody would know somebody who had to give up his or her regular bong habit because they couldn't stop throwing up. That's not to say that this syndrome may not exist, and certainly if you can't stop puking, put down the joint. You can be sure that Dr. Earlywine and I will cover this on Wednesday's Cannabis Science segment. NORML's Paul Armentano in the Hills Congress blog. Administration's new policy on medical marijuana is the right one. Now, as of this posting, Paul once again has proven to be the master traffic driver for the Hills blog. There are already 181 comments posted on this entry, and for comparison's sake, that is 181 comments more than every other post on the front page of the Hill blog combined. President Barack Obama campaigned on a platform of change. 2 months into his presidency, it is clear that this change pertains to the way Washington governs U.S. marijuana policy. Yesterday, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder reaffirmed that he will not authorize federal justice resources to target or prosecute medical cannabis users or providers that are compliant with state law. Holder's statements clarify remarks he made last month when he said that the Justice Department would uphold President Obama's campaign pledge not to use the power of the federal government to circumvent state medical marijuana laws. The Attorney General's position stands in marked contrast to that of prior administrations. During George W. Bush's 8 years in office, federal law enforcement charged numerous state-sanctioned medical cannabis providers with federal law violations, many of whom are now serving sentences of 5 to 10 years in prison. More commonly, U.S. drug enforcement agents performed so-called smash grabs on state-authorized dispensaries, a tactic whereby federal agents would seize cash but never press criminal charges. This latter policy was similar to the approach endorsed by the Clinton administration, which ordered the U.S. Justice Department to seek civil injunctions against dozens of cannabis cooperatives in an effort to seize their assets and permanently close their doors. But not everyone is pleased with the administration's new hands-off approach. Iowa Senator and longtime marijuana law reform opponent Charles Grassley immediately criticized Holder's announcement, stating, quote, "The first rule of medicine, first do no harm, is being violated by the Attorney General by his decision," end quote. Grassley's ideological opposition, though predictable, is offensive to those who support both science and the right of self-determination. Contrary to the GOP senator's assertion, cannabis possesses an impeccable safety record. Marijuana's active components, known as cannabinoids, are virtually non-toxic to cells and major organs and are incapable of causing a lethal overdose. In 2008, investigators at McGill University in Montreal reviewed over 30 years of data on marijuana and, quote, "did not find a higher incident rate of serious adverse events associated with medical cannabis use," end quote, compared to those who never use the drug. Even aspirin can't make such a claim. Further, Grassley's arrogant allegations are an affront to the 72 million Americans who reside in the 13 states where the use of medical cannabis is legal. They are equally objectionable to the 80% of voters nationwide who support the physician-supervised use of therapeutic cannabis. Funny, last time I checked, Chuck Grassley represented the state of Iowa, and only the state of Iowa, which is not one of the states that have legalized the possession and use of medical cannabis under state law. Perhaps in the future, Senator Grassley should stick to commenting specifically on those policies that directly impact the voters who he is elected to represent. When it comes to the laws that govern the lives and health of everyone else, the good senator ought to simply mind his own business. And can I just say how ironic it is to have an opponent of medical marijuana named Grassley?
Well, I smoked some marijuana with some people I like, just like everybody does from the East Coast to the West. I didn't even notice the cop on the bike, didn't know I was about to be the 20 millionth marijuana arrest. Should have fought for marijuana law reform, should have gone to the web and typed in norm. Norm to the L.org, normal drop the A.org, baby.
National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws is the largest grassroots drug law reform organization in America. So every Monday we visit with the activists in drug law reform who are fighting for our freedom. Get motivated to get it regulated. Join us in some political activism today. You can start by visiting NORML.org. This morning I was posting the story on Pennsylvania Representative Mark Cohen, who's going to be introducing a medical marijuana bill in the Keystone State. And I was a little concerned about the language being used in the news report because it talked about his bill definitely having prescriptions involved. And that sets off my radar since prescriptions means federal, which means the law wouldn't work. Since marijuana is Schedule 1, it cannot be prescribed, and any doctor who tries to do so loses his medical license. Therefore, you don't have a medical marijuana law if you have a prescription. The 13 medical marijuana states have recommendations for marijuana, which the federal government cannot stop. Not that they didn't try to back during the Clinton administration days and Rahm Emanuel, but that's another story for another time. So, to get some clarification on the issue, I decided to go straight to the source and call Representative Cohen's office, just hoping to book an interview for later in the day, which you will hear shortly. But this is the part where I got to speak with Leon Schakowsky, who's an aide to Representative Cohen, who's helping him to draft the bill, and it sounds as if I may have helped to change some of the wording of the bill. Listen for yourself.
Hello, this is Leon Schakowsky. May I help you?
Hi, Leon. My name's Russ Belville, and I do a show for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's a podcast on the internet, and we cover the news that's happening about marijuana law reform. Yeah. And we just broadcast we just published the news of Representative Cohen's bill that he was considering sponsoring here on medical marijuana. He had a quote in there, and it was about his bill requiring prescriptions. Does he literally mean like a doctor writing a prescription in this case?
Yes, that's what most of the states have done, is that a doctor have to look at a patient and say, yes, this person has one of a number of defined things, including chronic pain, HIV, AIDS, coma, and if the patient has to look at someone and then certify it, and they can get an ID, and then they'll be allowed to have and use medical marijuana.
Okay, Leon, this is why I'm concerned, because I actually work with Oregon NORML out here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm pretty well versed on most of the state medical marijuana laws, and they don't actually require the technical term prescription. They call it a recommendation, because if it's
yes.
Is that the idea?
I'm not sure we haven't written it, so we don't have the legal words, so it may not.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not sure if we're going to be using the word. In fact, thank you for putting that up. I will look at that. It may not be the word may not be prescribed.
Right.
Laypersons, but it'll probably be very similar to what other states have.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, there are actually laws on the books in Arizona and Connecticut that are medical marijuana laws, but they require prescriptions, and so they can't work because the federal government will take the licenses from those doctors if they prescribe. So
that's correct. Yes.
The wording gets really
important. It's not
important.
going to be prescribed, and we're going to protect doctors from any disciplinary action with the state board. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Is there any consideration in the bill for employment rights for the patients? We have a problem in Oregon where people can lose their jobs, and now they're trying to pass legislation to actually prevent them from getting work if they're medical marijuana patients. Have you considered that in the bill?
I would take a look at that. That's a good point that we probably hadn't thought of. We did have that they can be disciplined or be held against if they hold a state license of any kind.
Oh, that's really good.
Use of it, yes. For other types of employment, for employment protection, actually we might be interested. I don't know if that would actually pass, but it would be stripped out. But it's something actually, Representative Cohen, our office is very pro-labor. We're actually in the middle of drafting the legislation, so we have to hopefully we'll be getting co-sponsors in the next day or so, and within the next month he's pledged to introduce it.
Oh, excellent. Later in the day, I was able to speak directly with Representative Cohen. We're very excited about the developing items that are happening in various states around the country who are attempting to enact protections for the legal use of marijuana for medicinal purposes by sick or disabled folks. And we are very excited to be speaking with Representative Mark Cohen today, who represents Northeast Philadelphia in the great state of Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show, Representative.
Thank you very much.
Now, you've been in the news, and we've featured you in our news segments at NORML with your talk about producing a medical marijuana bill for the state of Pennsylvania. What led you to want to produce such legislation in your state?
Well, the Philadelphia Metro, a free daily newspaper, raised questions with me about what I thought about it. And I said, well, I'd be interested in supporting it if it had public support. And then I figured that with all the Internet communities I'm a member of, I could pretty much make a quick estimate as to how much public support it had. So I'm a member of, I've got a lot of Facebook friends. I'm on Philly Blog. I'm a member of Young Philly Politics. So I just asked the question. And all three areas I got overwhelming support. And, some of the people in the communities tend to be pretty conservative. So I was very much encouraged, and then one of the persons who responded gave me information about a poll that had been taken 3 years ago in Pennsylvania. At the time, the race for U.S. Senator between Rick Santorum, then the incumbent, and Bob Casey, now the incumbent, was heating up. And it was a sample that overestimated Republican strength in Pennsylvania, but it gave Casey a slim lead. Ultimately, he won by 18% over Santorum, and that somewhat more conservative than Pennsylvania poll sample had support for medical marijuana at 76%, as opposed to 20% who were against it.
So
and that and all the other soundings I had been taking showed that there is support for it, and I'm now working with staff and with NORML and others to try to produce a piece of legislation that, in my judgment, could pass in Pennsylvania.
Have you been?
Pennsylvania is the most socially conservative of the blue states, so this is not legislation that would probably be the first choice of all NORML members. But I'm trying to get a bill through. I'm not a candidate for president of NORML.
Exactly. And so looking at what's going on nearby in New Jersey, has that led you to want to move forward?
The fact that the New Jersey State Senate passed a bill which looks somewhat encouraging, and the Governor Corzine has agreed to sign the bill if it passes. I think these are very helpful signs.
Have you had any contact with medical marijuana patients or had any personal experiences that led you to understand this issue about medical marijuana?
I have not had any personal experiences with anybody who's taken marijuana. I have had personal experiences with people who have suffered from various diseases that it is claimed will be improved. Conditions will be improved by medical marijuana. I'm aware of the agony that people, for instance, with Crohn's disease and other digestive diseases go through. I'm aware of the agony that glaucoma patients go through, and I'm aware of the claims that medical marijuana in certain cases could help these people. And it seems to me that it's up to a qualified doctor to make a decision as to what is in the best interest of each patient, and it's not up for the state legislature or the federal government. And I want to see the doctors get the freedom to make those judgments they think are in the best interest of their patients.
So what is your next step then? Do you plan on introducing the bill soon?
Yes, I do. I intend to introduce the bill by the beginning of April.
Oh, that's excellent, and we'll cover that, of course, once it gets announced. Now, to this point, has there been any organized opposition to this bill from law enforcement or other more conservative legislators?
No, there's not. I assume when the bill is introduced, a lot of people are going to read it, and they will nitpick it, and that's what the legislative process is about. I want to write a bill that is very clear, that is helping people who really need the help. There's got to be a prescription from a reputable doctor, and we got to develop a system that medical marijuana produces significant tax revenues for the people of Pennsylvania, but we don't want to tax it so heavily that nobody will buy the legal marijuana because the illegal marijuana is so much cheaper.
We have 13 states now that have various medical marijuana programs, from what's kind of a freewheeling system in California to a more strict system that they would have in some of the other states. How much involvement do you anticipate involving the state of Pennsylvania in this program with respect to registrations or dispensing?
I think there'll be significant involvement by the state of Pennsylvania. I think that's the only way to get it through. I don't think it'll be at all a freewheeling program like California's.
Okay. So do you anticipate like a registry system for cardholders?
I would see a registry system for cardholders. We would specifically say that that information as to who the cardholders are will be private information. It will not be discoverable by the media or anyone else under our state right to know law. But we will have registration of doctors. We will have we'll have registration of distribution facilities. We will have registration of patients. There'll be fees associated with it, and in all likelihood, the products themselves will be taxed. So the state should make a significant amount of money out of this, which will be a major selling point.
Yeah, isn't Pennsylvania one of the states that's facing severe budget deficits at the moment, correct?
Pennsylvania is facing severe budget deficits at the moment, and we have long-term budget deficits too.
Yeah, it's
because our pension fund. We're one of the states that thought it was a great idea to invest pension funds in the stock market, and it was a great idea when the stock market was booming. Now, if the stock market is not booming, it's a nightmare. So our budget problems are not going to end when we enact the budget in June, unless there's a stunning stock market recovery. So we have to worry about long-term financial improvement. I doubt that this will be enacted by the end of June, but I'm sure it will still be relevant to the state's fiscal situation because it will be a steady source of revenue over the long haul.
So, based on what you were saying earlier, and there's the old famous political saying from James Carville about Pennsylvania from one end to the other. And do you anticipate problems trying to sell this to the legislators who
I
are
do not believe this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is craft a bill which makes it available to the most vulnerable populations to whom the legislature is most sympathetic.
Great.
And it generates a significant amount of state revenues for a state that needs state revenues and doesn't really want to raise taxes.
Understood.
So I think this is a bill that I think we're going to craft a bill which, in my judgment, the judgment of people I'm working with, will have about a 50-50 chance of passage over the next few years. I spoke to an advocate who said, "Well, the state ought to just give out free marijuana." I said, "Well, it depends what you want to do. If you want to have a bill that that sort of acts to bear witness, and you don't really care whether it becomes a law in 50 or 100 or 500 or 1,000 years, don't get introduced a free marijuana bill.
Yeah.
But if you want a bill that's got a reasonable chance of becoming law within the lifetime of living people,
yeah, correct.
Then we're not going to have free marijuana.
Right. Well, that's
and I think people understood what I was saying, and we want a bill that's passable, in the near-term future.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we'll do, and, we'll see what the effects are.
If any of our listeners out there are interested in helping push that bill past the 50-50 mark and maybe into some more positive territory, what suggestions would you have for them?
Well, I think it's important you contact your legislator. People, the legislators are amazingly responsive to individuals who take the time to call them. On the average bill, 0 people contact the average legislator. So if there are, if there are 10 or 20 or 30 people from a given district who contact their legislator, that's going to make a pretty big impression. And you have to make a big impression because you can assume from other states that there'll be some law enforcement or some conservative groups they're going to be against it. And, it helps to show strong citizen support. Now, the legislature is not rushed into action. California did this in 1996.
Yeah.
And, 12 and a half years later, almost, this will be the first bill introduced in Pennsylvania.
Right. Well,
we've taken our time. We've looked at the experience of other states. The fact that 13 states have now passed it, 9 by voter referendum is a strong sign of public opinion. The fact there are national polls showing about 80% of the people favor this, and we had a statewide poll 3 years ago that's roughly consistent with the belief that about 80% of the people favor it. The fact that the Philadelphia Metro, a free daily newspaper, did its own online poll and found out that 95% of its online readers were in favor of it. So these all show that there's very, very substantial support for this legislation. There's a very, very strong medical case. There are many, many medical groups, from the New Jersey Nurses Association to the American Academy of Family Physicians, to the College of Physicians, to the American Public Health Association, that support medical marijuana. And I think that gradually the very strong factual case for it and the strong public support for it will wear down the forces of resistance within the Pennsylvania General Assembly.
Well, we certainly hope so, and we hope that Pennsylvania will join the other states in protecting these people. And we really appreciate the hard work you're doing, Representative Cohen, in getting this bill introduced. Thank you for joining us here on The Stash.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have you considered medical marijuana? Double-blind, peer-reviewed studies have found cannabinoid therapies to be successful in treating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, brain cancers, chronic pain, diabetes mellitus, dystonia, fibromyalgia, GI disorders, hepatitis C, HIV/AIDS, hypertension, incontinence, MRSA, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, pruritus, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome, as well as anecdotal evidence suggesting relief from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, plus reduction in the need for narcotic painkillers. Side effects of medical marijuana can include euphoria, relaxation, anxiety, panic reactions, paranoia, tachycardia, dry eyes, dry mouth, concentration and reaction time impairment, appetite increase, and in 37 states, arrest and incarceration. But medical marijuana is non-toxic and cannot cause overdose. Medical marijuana. It's not for everyone, but ask your doctor if medical marijuana may be right for you. The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. Monday's music with a message is When the Cops Ain't Around by D-Dub, 2009 Marijuana Music Awards nominee. D-Dub's ability to deliver lyrics with deep meaning defines him most as an artist. He combines soulful music with modern beats that gets listeners rockin'. D-Dub brings a new flavor to hip-hop while retaining the qualities that makes classic albums. He molds positive messages with synthesized beats to create a unique blend of music. D-Dub has a diverse fan base, performing for hip-hop and rock lovers alike. D-Dub has released 2 albums, The New Age of Enlightenment Volume 1, and in January 2009, Volume 2, Quest for Enlightenment, which has been winning fans with its heavy percussion and southern melody. D-Dub lives in the studio and says the Volume 3 CD will be out in summer 2009 to finish his Enlightenment-themed series. D-Dub is set to bring his music to as many ears as possible in the future. He's on a mission to usher in a new era of hip-hop that is respectable, positive, and speaks for the average person. For more about D-Dub, check out myspace.com/D-Dub Records. That's DEEDUB. Here's Monday's Music with a Message. An MP3 download for you registered stashers is available at stash.normal.org. This is When the Cops Ain't Around by D-Dub.
The warden to restrict his telephone privileges.
Won't make any difference. He'll find his way around that.
Yeah, well...
Paul, what I need is some permanent closure.
I don't know how much more closure you're going to get unless you kill him.
So kill me, bitch. Yo, let me talk to you. Okay. Yo, ever since birth, I always been down. So it's no shock that I'm breaking down pounds. And I feel safer when the cops ain't around. When the cops ain't around. When the cops ain't around. Yo, when the cops ain't around. Fuzz wanna book me, cause I'm a criminal. Point blank, I said it straight, it's not subliminal. Weed is a plant, they said weed is a drug. I'm like, homie, where the fuck you get your information? Try it for yourself before you knock it for the masses. Roll that, light that, puff that, pass it. Turn that fresh road, switch it into ashes. When you start feeling funny, homie, that's it. It's much better than getting drunk and ignorant, slurring at the girls in the club while you starting shit. Cause they don't wanna talk to your drunk ass. You should keep it cool, puff, puff, pass. Come by the crib, we got joints in rotation. Breathe deep and enjoy the occasion. It's all kush, so we stoned when we blazing. I got the whole world blown with amazement. Cause there ain't nothing wrong with smoking cannabis. There's no reason they should have a ban on it. But I never let laws keep me down. So it's no shock that I'm breaking down pounds. And I feel safer when the cops ain't around. 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 I roll that, light that, puff that, pass that to my man on the left, then he grabbed that, puff that, pass that, and keep it moving till everybody in the house just grooving. I can't lie right now, I'm real high right now. I might pick up double A and just ride the town. Get a pulse of the city, as my man say, cruising down Hollywood as my jams play. Hop on the 101, swoop down to downtown. Crackheads got they swag out in downtown. Walking around with the hell of a strut, like all I need is crack and I'm living a plush life. I'm looking at them like, whoa, whoa, buddy. I never seen weed do that to nobody. How you gon' classify weed and crack together? They both narcotics and they both band together? What? It's all shit, I'm really not feeling them. Let's have a debate, I bet I be killing them. Maybe then they could get to realizing you gotta change with the times and legalize it. Cause there ain't nothing wrong with smoking cannabis. There's no reason they should have a ban on it. But I never let laws keep me down. So it's no shock that I'm breaking down pounds. And I feel safer when the cops ain't around. 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 I roll that, light that, puff that, pass that to my man on the left, then he grabbed that, puff that, pass that, and keep it moving till everybody in the house just grooving. Yeah, everybody just grooving. Yeah, this is my abolitionist song. I think they should get rid of some of these weed laws, you know what I mean? They be locking up our people on possession of marijuana. They got you in there, you looking at your little county card, probably says level 4 or some bullshit. They put you with violent offenders, you know what I'm saying? You over here with all these motherfucking crazy people, and all you was doing was smoking some weed. Damn. I feel you, homies. Don't trip. Homegirls, it's all good. We're gonna change this shit one day. Promise you that. PBC. Say PBC. 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 That's the click.
I'm a normal guy. I like the outdoors. I work a 9 to 5. And I use marijuana recreationally and responsibly in the privacy of my own home. Recently, I became one of the 20 million Americans who have been arrested for a marijuana-related offense. Now I face jail time and my future is in jeopardy. But couldn't police resources have been spent more wisely? After all, 90% of all marijuana-related arrests are for simple possession. Is this normal?
What makes NORML the most popular and effective marijuana reform organization in the world is the dedicated political activists at the grassroots level who make up our NORML chapters and college affiliates all across America and around the world. The people at these local NORML chapters are just like you, average cannabis consumers with an above-average desire to fight for truth, justice, and freedom. You can make a difference in your area by joining your local NORML chapter. If there isn't one nearby, get yourself and 4 friends to join National NORML, then send an email to chapters@norml.org and we'll get you started on forming your own NORML chapter. Then what? Well, listen in now to someone just like you who's already formed a NORML chapter in our continuing Monday segment, Chapter of the Week.
Political activists are standing in the streets now. Political activists are crying for justice.
For my new post as NORML's Chapter Outreach Coordinator, part of my job is to try to develop more NORML chapters throughout the country. And one place that we're definitely looking to increase the representation for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws is on college campuses all across the nation. So I have called one of our excellent chapter coordinators, James Kowalski, who's at Northwestern University NORML and Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And James, welcome to the Stash.
Hey, good to be here, Russ.
Now, you were telling me that you founded your chapter there. What was the most intimidating thing about trying to get a NORML started on your college campus?
I'd say the first threshold for me was just, going to the NORML office, making that first phone call, and finding out what it was going to take. Up until then, there was a lot of fear and uncertainty about it. But once I got into NORML and spoke to the associate director and the campus outreach coordinator, they laid it out for me pretty simply what I had to do in order to start my own chapter, and I got a couple friends together and we got to work.
And it's a little bit different starting a chapter on campus. NORML will oftentimes waive the fees necessary to join NORML. What were the steps you had to take basically to get your chapter off the ground?
Well, the first things we had to do were prove that we could be an organization to our student government before they would recognize us. So that involved coordinating some events and doing some fundraising, which NORML definitely helped us out with. The fact that we can screen grass for free on our campus is a big plus to all the campus chapters. We do it every year at the start of the year. It's a great way to get publicity for the student group and get people interested in other causes related to drug policy. So that provided us with the very first event to do. The next event we did after that, we had Peter Vokelis, who's on the board of directors for NORML. He's a lawyer in Chicago, and he came up to Evanston and spoke for us. So NORML was very supportive in helping us establish ourselves as a respectable chapter on campus and proving that we were going to provide the school with good programming.
Yeah, that movie that he's mentioning, Grass, in case you folks listening haven't heard of it, that's the Ron Mann documentary narrated by Woody Harrelson, which pretty much gives the history of marijuana prohibition from, the early 20th century all the way to, the end of the 20th century. And yeah, every time I show that, James, it's a big hit with anybody that watches it. They can't believe some of the stuff they see in that.
Yeah, well, it does such a good job of balancing the education with the funny side of things.
Yeah, it is entertaining too. That's a good way to put it. And you also mentioned the member of the NORML Legal Committee who helps you out as far as doing presentations. Has that been the only kind of presentations you've done on campus? Do you have regular meetings as well?
Oh yeah, we meet once every 2 weeks. We try to do speakers. We do firesides, which are informal discussions where we go into a dorm on campus. We invite we invite the whole dorm, but usually 15 to 20 people show up and we have a conversation either about some of the myths associated with marijuana or medicinal marijuana or harm reduction policies and what that can do. So we go and we have these informal discussions. We also do, we obviously try to do more fun events as well. Like this past Halloween, we did a pumpkin carving party at someone's apartment, like we try to balance the educational and the fun side of things also.
That's great. Now, at the student government level, a lot of NORML chapters at the college campuses will get involved with the student senate and try passing different bills and resolutions. Have you made any changes at Northwestern University with regard to student government and marijuana enforcement?
We've actually got some particularly horrible policies at our school, so I never mind harping about them. This is the case at a lot of across a lot of campuses. In most dorm rooms, the way that alcohol is handled is that if a CA or a residential assistant, community assistant, believes that students are drinking and they're underage in a dorm room, they knock on the door, they enter, and if they see, smell, find alcohol, they pour it out, they throw it away, and they write up the students, and they get referred to the alcohol and drug specialist and any administrative people they have to see. If marijuana is involved, if a CA smells marijuana, they don't knock on the door, they don't talk to the student at all, they're instructed to call the police immediately. The police are the ones who knock on the door. The police are the ones who, if they smell anything, come into the room and search, and if they find anything, the student is carried out of their dorm room in handcuffs. This policy, to me, is absolutely shocking, that a university that's supposed to pride itself on developing mature and productive citizens is cornering us and, damaging our chances of getting a good job by giving us this criminal record.
Wow.
It's just incredibly counterproductive, and it doesn't make any sense. I've had several meetings with people around the school about this policy, and though there's some, sympathy, the general line at the school is always, we follow federal policy.
Yeah.
And, they really don't take into consideration students. Though, proud fact from this last quarter at a school, this winter we had one student who was in a situation like this. She had marijuana in her room, and her CA called the police. And when the police came to the door, they said, hey there, we had a report that you've been smoking some marijuana in here. She said, absolutely not. And when they asked to come in, she said, no, I'd prefer if you didn't. Actually, I'm very sensitive about my stuff. It's a mess in there, and I would rather you not come in here. She effectively stopped them from searching her room. And because of that, despite this horrible policy on campus, there was a way for her to protect herself.
That's good. People need to know that they don't have to assent to a search. You can just say no to the police when they ask to search your stuff. Unless they have a warrant, there's no need for them to be coming in. Now, as we wind this interview up here, James, I'm just wondering, with regard to your college chapter here, how can people get in touch with you? Do you have a website, a Facebook, MySpace, any of that kind of stuff you want to tell the people?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with us, you can look us up on Facebook. We're just Northwestern NORML, NORML. And if you want to send us an email and get in touch with the listserv, so that you can be updated about upcoming events and meetings. The email is northwesternnormal, all one word, @gmail.com. And besides that, you know what? Give me a call. My phone number is 954-593-0667.
Excellent.
I'm happy to take any calls. And if you're interested in events we have coming up, if you want to learn about the drug week that we're planning for the spring, go ahead and give me a call and we can talk about it.
And the website you had listed, amiacriminal.com. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually less of an organizational website and more of a protest. Every spring we launch some kind of protest or campaign that's a little bit bigger. The weather's nice in Chicago, so we have a little more freedom to do things on campus. Last year we did an event called Starve the Prison Industrial Complex to bring attention to the problems with prison overcrowding and lack of services. The year before that we did one called amiacriminal.com. And we launched this website and did a week of publicity for it where we went around campus in convict jumpsuits, bright orange all over campus, and we promoted this website called amiacriminal.com and trying to shift the discussion and saying, people who use drugs are around in society. We're not going anywhere, and am I so bad? Aren't I a human being too?
That's a wonderful campaign. I like the website, and it's a great message you're putting out there. And you're showing folks how anyone on their college campus can put together a NORML chapter and do some really effective work. We really appreciate what you're doing out there, James. Thank you.
Yeah, it's surprising how much you can do with such a small level of commitment. You find 2 or 3 people who are really dedicated, and you generate a small amount of funding. And there's so many things that you can do, from favors and from phone calls and from people who are passing through. Mason Tvert of the SAFER organization out in Colorado, he was on a speaking tour in the area, and because we were in touch with the right network, he offered to come and speak at our school for free because he was going to be around anyway. So, the opportunities are endless to do events. It's just the trouble is really trying to narrow down what exactly you want to do with the limited amount of time you have.
That's the perfect attitude. And Mason's message about alcohol and marijuana, that resonates really well on the college campuses, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
This idea
it's just such an easy line of argument. It makes so much sense to people, and you can't argue with it. It's the truth.
Well, you mentioned that policy you were talking about at the dorms where, if I have a choice of drinking beer or smoking a joint in my dorm room, and I know one's going to bring the cops and the other one's just going to bring the RA, guess which one you pick?
Yeah, exactly.
James Kowalski is the executive director of Northwestern NORML at Northwestern University in Chicago, Illinois, and we'll get all the contact information up at the blog at stash.norml.org if you'd like to be in touch. And anything else you want to say in parting, James?
Yeah, just thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, James. Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with a reminder that it's not too late to donate some money to the NORML ad campaign. We're trying to raise $20,000 to start placing these ads on cable television packages around the country. We've currently got about $12,000, and we could use a couple more donations from those of you in the audience to get that over the 20,000 hump. Check out the page from the norml.org website. Look in the top right corner for Donate to NORML advertising. You'll see the little thermometer telling you how far along the donations have gotten, and you can donate by PayPal or secure credit card. You don't even have to donate a whole lot. I suggest you donate $4.20 until $4.20. How about that? $4.20 a week, 5 weeks until $4.20. You'd be given $21 to help get those ads on the air. Think about it. Thanks for listening to the podcast and helping to make us the most popular place for news and information about grassroots organizing in marijuana law reform. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.